All right, thank you very much, Krista. I'm just around the cul-de-sac here with this fantastic security panel titled Defending Installations from Next Generation Threats. And these are experts in their trade, experts in their craft. We got Chasity Wright. She's the founder and CTO of Infiltron Software Suite. Thank you, Chasity. We've got Lieutenant Colonel David Watts. He's the Director of Technologies Integration User Rep at the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. Been with the Air Force for over 25 years. Colonel Watts, thank you for joining us. We got Deirdre Fike. Deirdre is the Vice President of Security Investigations at MGM Resorts International. She was also the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Los Angeles Field Office, and she was Special Agent in charge for the Alaska Field Office for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Deirdre, thank you for joining us. And finally, Chief Master Sergeant Todd Boren, Security Forces Manager at the 432nd Security Forces Squadron here at Creech Air Force Base, where he leads almost 200 airmen in the base defense for Creech. So Chief Boren, thank you so much for joining us today. So you've heard a lot about Base of the Future. We just heard our Assistant Secretary talk about so many of the different security measures that we need to be thinking about for the next 20 years, but he also talked about a lot of threats. And so let's start off there. I'll turn it over to you first, Deirdre. When we think about some of the big global threats that are out there that we need to take into consideration today, but also 2035, 2040, what are some things that come to mind?
Yeah, thank you, John, for including me in this. And I want to start out by just thanking my fellow panelists and everybody out there. Thank you for your sacrifices and for your service to our country as well. So I go back to my old days in the FBI when I think about our global threat, but also now in the private sector, how that impacts everything that we do with our global footprint and technology and the environment that we live in today compared to the years past. For example, look at us working remotely here, how you can have a conference with participants around the country. There's really no longer boundaries in our ability to connect, or that means for our enemies to access our information as well. So we talk a lot about perimeter security. What does that mean with fences, gates, access control? But we also have to apply that same vision to our infrastructure and looking at how to protect our resources. So when we talk about national security, there's really no jurisdictional boundaries. And when it comes to the China threat, which we all consider one of our most significant threats, there's really two groups. One group that's been hacked by the Chinese government, and one group that doesn't know that they've been hacked by the Chinese government. Because anymore, it's not really about who's going to be the next victim, but how many times you'll be victimized and how bad it will be. And what we know is that the Chinese government is strategic. They have 5-year plans. They look at our technology, and they think if you're in an organization that isn't thinking about the same way that our adversaries do, then we're behind the curve before we even get started. China's strategic goals include modernizing its military, infiltrating our technology, innovation and economic growth. And they actually have a China 2025 plan that includes 10 domestic security industries that are targeting technology and aerospace equipment. So for us to be successful, we have to continue to work together in the public and private sector, share information, provide joint solutions, and identify and be proactive to the threat that's facing us.
Yeah, that's good insights, Deirdre. Thank you very much. You mentioned China, and over to you, Chasity. The Assistant Secretary mentioned, he said, looking out for threats that destroy the power system. So I come over to you, I say, how about from your world, when you look at cyber, we just heard from a CEO of a blockchain company. You got ongoing hacks in our systems, our aircrafts, our infrastructure. My dad's MySpace account from way back when, right? All of our systems are getting hacked. Scare us, please.
So with the introduction of 5G to the smart base projects that are getting ready to roll out, we want to make sure one of the upcoming threats, futuristic threats, is the sensors that are going to be introduced to the base. What we're seeing in places like China, as mentioned, Ukraine is now another country that's cropping up, that's coming hard on the cyber warfare front. We're seeing espionage groups grow out of China, Russia, and Ukraine very heavily. And some of the issues that pop up as far as attacks are on the, like you said, the energy system. You have places that depend on electricity to make systems work, right? And what we've seen in places like Detroit or in the Midwest, when the grid went down, sewage spewed back into the water resources. So, you know, you're looking at people like at Robins Air Force Base, they have a civil engineering group down there that they take care of the base's water treatment plant. Just, you know, for example, if someone was able to get into or hack into that grid down at Robins Air Force Base, we're looking at an issue like sewage of drinking water, you know, being a part of the drinking water system, and we not being able to do anything about it because the hackers have taken over the sensors. So it's things like that that we want to be prepared for and be proactive about protecting those sensors and the innovative technologies that we're going to introduce to a more legacy-based military installation setting.
Yeah, that's really good, Chasity. And Colonel Watts, I'm gonna come to you here in just a second. Let me go to Chief Boren for a second and break it down. Let's look at the base level, because another threat that obviously the umbrella of COVID, and it could be something that falls within security someday, because we're hearing the term health and safety, but now we're hearing the term health, safety, and security. So is that something that could potentially fall within your scope, or maybe what's your biggest takeaway as you're still trying to lead airmen through this unprecedented time? What's been your biggest takeaway for the last 5 to 6 months?
So health, safety, and security has definitely been a part of force protection for some time now. You know, our threat working group, our intel fusion stuff, we do look at medical intelligence, and we were getting ahead of kind of putting together courses of action and stuff to counter COVID while minimizing the risk of exposure and maximizing, you know, kind of our security footprint. You know, we leaned on some of the technologies that are out there as far as defense biometrics, but you know, that comes also with a cost of, you know, you're trusting a system versus a human being, and you know, so that risk, you know, is something that definitely is kind of in the minds of our commanders.
Yeah, so we got the cyber piece, we got the physical security piece, we got a lot of things that Deirdre talked about. Obviously, the pandemic, the health, safety, and security side. So Colonel Watts, let's shift a little bit and start looking at some of the biggest challenges we face in preparing for the threats for today, but also the next generation threats. And that's something you've been doing. A couple of things that Colonel Watts gets to do behind the scenes is on the technological integration and looking at some of these great inventions and great innovation that's happening that we can or cannot use. And we'll get into that here in a second. But you know, you've heard a lot about each of these different verticals, but we're at a point in time now where it all overlays, doesn't it? I mean, how have those relationships changed over the last 25 years? And can you talk about the importance of integration for the next 25?
Sure, convergence is a big thing, right? So we talked about some of the specific threats and threat actors, and I'll introduce some thoughts on characteristics for next generation threats, some of which is already here now. But I think we're facing pervasive, insidious, dynamic, rapidly evolving threats that'll come at us in multiple ways and means that cross domains and take advantage of some of the seams and gaps that we have between security disciplines and between our systems and information systems as well. They might be overt attacks that come at us really fast and overwhelm our systems and processes and break our OODA loop, or they might come at us, you know, like Deirdre mentioned, really slowly and lightly and over the course of years, and we don't ever even know that we got attacked or what we might have lost in it. So those are some of the characteristics I think that are important in next generation threats. When we talk about solutions, the next generation technologies that we need to face those threats, we need the ability to constantly monitor the security environment across all domains, security domains and otherwise, in a holistic way. We need to be able to continuously and maybe even autonomously assess the risk as it evolves. And then we need to be able to proactively, predictively manage those security risks, detecting and responding to threats in real time or near real time. Because if we can't act in real time or near real time, then we're already way behind. And that's where I think some of these groundbreaking technologies that we're talking about come into play.
Yeah, that's really good insight. The secretary brought that up. He brought up data and automation. I'm going to turn it over to you here, Chasity, in just a second. as we look at that and we hear robotics, AI, machine learning, there comes a point in time where a lot of this, we're already going to the digital automated side, right? You've got airmen that are being equipped with some of this. We're trying to digitize them, and wouldn't be surprised if the topic of multifunction airmen is on our new chief of staff's list of things that he's going to focus on. But when you think about that, there's still a lot of challenges there. You've got these legacy systems, and you got these new systems. You got to plug them all in together. You can't just stop the plane from flying mid-flight, right? So, you mind giving us some insights on that and how you think about that from a technology perspective?
Well, from a technology perspective, it's all about strategy. It's all about understanding what the legacy system provided during its time, and actually sitting down with the end users and the people, the Air Force people that are going to use the newer innovative technologies for the new system, and training them, educating them, empowering them with information on how to utilize the newer innovations with AI and blockchain and machine learning and robots. I can definitely see robots being used by an agency like DLA to kind of turn it into an Amazon fulfillment type situation, which in turn turns it into an industrial IoT ecosystem. So the main thing is to make sure that you empower the people that are going to use this new system as much as possible. So training is at the top of the list for sure, and just coming in with a collaborative mindset on both sides of the table.
Yeah, that's a good point on the training side. What about on the equipment side? How do you feel like as a service, because you have companies that are going through digital transformation? Those companies that do it well are the ones that continue to succeed and flourish. Those that do not are the ones that are left behind. Where would you say that we are at as an Air Force right now?
As an Air Force, I say we're pre-gold rush, because at the minimum, the Air Force is aware of these technologies, and they're also aware that how these technologies will accelerate them in the technology space to help, increase defense across systems, across domains, for the aircraft, for the personnel as they're entering a base or a military installation through facial recognition. So, it's going to be a lot of testing and a lot of R&D involved here, right? It starts there, just understanding, again, like I said previously, understanding the terrain as it is now. So when we bring those innovations on the scene with the legacy hardware, we understand it, and we can probably turn around the integration time a little bit faster.
Yeah, that's great. And Chief, this next one is for you, because Chasity did mention our people in her first answer. And so what does this look like? What does this look like for the airmen of the future, 5, 10, 15, 20 years out? And then is that going to change the airmen that you recruit when you bring them into force protection, you bring them into security forces?
So I think the airmen will be fully integrated with the technologies that are out there. We'll have common operating pictures. They'll be equipped with some type of smart device that is integrated into, the sensors assigned to their weapons, their vehicles, cameras, sensors across the base, everything to this, this single platform. As far as kind of are these airmen ready to integrate these technologies in their daily job? I would say yes. The airmen are ready for this. The question really is my generation ready to teach them how to integrate these technologies? We grew up as technologies were being introduced, where the airmen of today and the airmen of tomorrow are going to come up, where these technologies were interwoven in their daily lives. So for them, it's not going to change who we recruit. It's not going to change, kind of how we go about our business as far as security goes. This is going to be, integrating those technologies, and then, as Chasity said, empowering the airmen to go forward and use them.
Yeah, that's great, and I think it's critically important that we are all integrated in that respect, because I know I can use that training as well. Let's turn to a couple of questions about the decision makers. and the leaders that are out there. And I'll turn this over to Deirdre and Colonel Watts for this one. How is data and more real-time information, how's that going to change the information flow that comes into decision makers? And are we seeing this transition where we're going to have dashboards in the future, and you've got your commanders that are going to be able to make these decisions real time? Are the decisions going to be made for him or her, or is it going to be sort of an integration of both?
Yeah, and if I can, I just wanted to add on to what the chief was talking about as well, that we combine this experience and knowledge with our leadership, with the young people that are coming in that are used to growing up with technology. And late in my career, I realized I needed a millennial mentor, and brought a team together to really talk about how do we advance and use data and that technology to drive us. And in my position now, I oversee our Global Security Operations Center, where we track all of our incidents and daily reports. And we sit on a lot of data that is used for a daily use to drive decisions tactically. But what we're doing now is developing BI dashboards and looking at how do we take that data, how do we inform, how do we identify trends, and how do we react to that? And how do I put together reports that I can provide to my leaders that'll help them make the right decisions to mitigate the risk for our organization? So I think that we have to constantly be ahead of that and use that data to make those decisions that help us in the future, not just looking at what's happened in the past and how to react to that.
No, thanks for that, Deirdre. And I know for MGM, we have a lot of arenas, right? We have a lot of ticketed events. So providing that security perimeter is something that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot of overlay between industry and what we're doing here at AFWERX and the Air Force. Colonel Watson, do you care to comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we throw around that term COP, a common operating picture, quite a bit. And years ago, that meant people in multiple places are looking at the same map, the same screen, and the dots on the map. And now I think we've come to a place with technology that's almost an obsolete concept. Now it's more about getting the right information to the right people wherever they are in a timely manner. And we have the ability to package that up, to fit that user, whoever that user happens to be, whether it's the airman with a phone or a tablet that's in the middle of doing the mission, or in an operations center at the installation, or at a major command level, or even a global level like Deirdre was saying. And some of the work that Kessel Run's doing, some of the work with projects like JADC2 are just incredible, and show the potential of that ability to package up information in a useful way for the specific individuals that need to use it at that time.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. And let's transition to the last 5 or so minutes of our conversation here, because obviously, so we've scared everybody, right? I want some salient solutions, like give us some hope, a light at the end of the tunnel. Colonel Watts, I'll stay with you on this because you've been behind the scenes assessing some of the submissions for this challenge. I've seen some of them. I'm pretty optimistic. How about you? What's been going on?
Oh, it's been a fantastic experience. It's really opened my eyes to the potential and the innovation in the defense innovations ecosystem as a whole. But it was really encouraging to see, hundreds and hundreds of submissions just coming in to the Base Security and Defense Challenge event. Not to mention the over 1,000 of other submissions for Base of the Future. So that was encouraging. They're game-changing technologies, things that we've thought about before but didn't know how to get to, offered solutions, and then things that we've never even imagined before surfaced as potential viable solutions. Whether we're talking about some of the information systems, how to integrate technologies and systems, communications technologies, and how to get away from having a push-to-talk radio network, and that was the only option that we had that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't, to a place where we can have secure, resilient communications wherever we are in the world. User interface solutions like we just talked about, how to get better command control communications at the user level and at all levels. AI, decision support and operations center, automation, robotics, unmanned systems, access control, biometrics, and I could probably go on for hours. I know we don't have that time.
No, but we could go on for hours. I would love to do that. But the next, I know Salient Solutions, we've heard a lot about biometrics. It's been brought up already a couple of times today. I think through 15 years ago, if you told me to put my thumbprint in a phone or to get my retinal scan to clear, I would have said, no way. But now everyone's doing it. Millions of people are doing it. They want their iPhones. They want to be able to have that access. So Chasity, to you, what's changed? Why have people become more comfortable sharing their data?
Convenience. Smart devices provide convenience. Smartphones are allowing you access fairly quickly. The PCs and laptops are smarter now. They move quicker. Our internet access and connectivity is faster. So versus me having to dial in or tap in a 4 or 6 digit PIN number to get into an iPhone, I can just put my face to it and boom, I'm in. So, you know, it's the convenience of the technology. They're willing to trade that off, so to speak, for the utilization of a smart device.
And Deirdre, I know you did a lot of this investigations with the FBI. So from that data protection individual perspective, how do you balance needs of the investigative side with the security side while also protecting privacy concerns?
Right, and that's a big challenge. And I think that we find ways to overcome that through our trust and relationships, working with the public and private sector together. But for instance, you know, the convenience is wonderful. I love it. I don't have to look for my passwords. I think everybody wants that convenience. But also, you have to look at what do we need from a law enforcement perspective if we're looking at a criminal investigation, if we have a national security threat. And arriving in Los Angeles shortly after the San Bernardino shootings, it became evident that we were having difficulty getting into the iPhone of one of the subjects who was killed in a shootout with the police. And we didn't know if there were other individuals involved. We didn't know what we would find. And the telephone companies, Apple had created actually a system where they did protect and they valued the privacy of individuals, and even they couldn't get into that data. Ultimately, it was going to court, and just before the hearing, there was a solution when a third party was able to find out how to get into that phone and access the data. What would have happened if we would have continued to try it through our normal means is after 10 failed attempts, the data would have all been eliminated. Now we look at the biometrics. We see cases where they're actually using a deceased person's fingerprint to try to get into a telephone for evidence and information. And we found that, you know, that doesn't always work. There's a limit on what you can apply toward that. But I think the important part of that, and I know these discussions are ongoing, is that there has to be trust, there has to be oversight, and there has to be a lawful process that allows law enforcement to justify going into somebody's data for the purposes of national security or in furtherance of a criminal investigation. And that's going to happen just through constant communications, partnerships between the private sector and our government agencies.
Yeah, and I see Chasity nodding her head over there. We do have to protect that data. And I want to come over to you, Chief Boren, real quick. We got about 2 minutes left. Biometrics on bases. Is there going to be a time and date when I just drive right through the base and I do not have to show my ID?
So I think we're moving, you know, to that point in time. COVID has definitely accelerated that, giving us the ability to do some live scanning at the gates, license plate readers, facial recognition, data analysis. You know, these are all technologies that exist and could be used in base security practices and could definitely, you know, get us to that point of, you know, taking defenders off the front line and allowing us to be more in a response kind of capacity versus, you know, checking IDs.
Great. Well, I hope so. I don't have to worry about leaving my CAC card anywhere. So we got 1 minute left. So 50-second lightning round to close. Give us more hope. Game-changing security technology that none of us are aware of. I'll start with you, Deirdre.
I would say just what we were talking about, being able to find efficiencies through technology that allows us to use artificial intelligence, being able to fill those gaps and find solutions that are more efficient.
Colonel Watts.
So the thing I think people are generally aware of, but one of the most interesting and exciting pieces is that Some people coin the phrase humology, the integration of technology with humans, and for our airmen to have like HoloLens and AR, VR, and the power of deep learning and computing on them. They're carrying the technology on their person and using it in real time. I think that's probably one of the bigger, interesting, and game-changing technologies I've seen.
I agree. Over to you, Chief. 10 seconds.
Integration. Got to be able to integrate all the new technologies with the old technologies.
That threads together very well. And I want to close with you, Chasity. What about you?
So taking all of everything that everybody said and doing user behavior analysis and creating cybersecurity training out of that analysis to better increase the posture for the Air Force, the cybersecurity posture.
All right. Thank you so much to my wonderful panel. We've got a lot to do, obviously, on this front, but it sounds like we got the right people in charge and pushing us in the right direction. So thank you for joining us.